They talked about it last night. It's not working. And he should. I didn't. So
I did not make an agenda. Sorry.
email address, I'll forward it. I have specifically designed
We're going to do town, we're going to do articles, we're going to do petition articles, comment for the town. I'm not considering this petition articles. I'm just going to say
To a certain extent, but I think it's a little bit more direct. I went through my
even things like minutes in the past. Right. No, I mean, I wanted to. And we will take it. Why did you take it? Because we didn't know where you were.
No, it's I actually was talking to someone.
You should find a chair around the too, but I can promise you we will take care of the chair.
Towns, well, look at the towns.
Oh,
I will.
Public hearings not available.
I don't know, is that true?
I suspect it is.
maybe the auto.
You guys stick around, George?
Switch over.
I mean, pretty much everything you have is there.
So there's one. It seems so easy to.
Peter? Peter. Oh, okay. Good.
Thanks for coming.
George, you need a seat? You got one.
What was that?
You need a chair? You got
I got a chair.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. How do I know everybody's set here? Am I good? Are they set up top or? Are we doing a pledge? Okay.
This
Thank you,
is
sir.
the copy of the warrant. Mike, you want me to give out copies to everybody?
Well, we'll make them aware it's available. Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let me start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice. Thank you. I'm Mike Smith. I'm the chair of the Budget Committee, and for those watching at home, this is January 9th, and this is our budget hearing where we'll discuss all of the budgets that are going to go forward to the deliberative session in February. First, I'd like to introduce our Budget Committee members, George Fullerton, Susanna Bazell, Craig Campbell, Cole Reel, Peter Georgantis, Diane McCarthy, Carl Soderquist, Peter Gregorakakis, and Kelly Boyer, and Dennis Lynch is excused tonight. In starting, I'd really like to express my thanks to all the members of the Budget Committee for their help and support and participation. It's been very helpful and very good insights from all the members, and my thanks to all of you. I also would like to thank the Select Board, the School Board, Adam Jacobs, and Derek, and the SAU leaders, the department heads in the town, and the principals and school leaders. There's been a lot of effort that's gone through the whole budget process. We've been hard at work for the last couple of months, and here we are. Excuse me. So our agenda for tonight, we're going to go through the town budget numbers, the town warrant articles, and we have a petition warrant article for the town, and then we'll take any public comment on the town parts of the budget. And then following that, we'll discuss the school budget and the school warrant articles, and we will have public comment on that afterwards. Following that, we will have a budget committee meeting. We'll discuss any things we've heard there, look to any of the changes, solidify any recommendations or not recommendations, and you're free to stay for that as well. So with that, let me start with the town budget. And go ahead, Derek. The proposed budget for 2018. You can see the number up there, 21,594,414. This is an increase of 6.4% and 1,297,424. And the default budget is 20,541,857, and a difference of $1 million. $52,557. Looking at this department by department, town-wide, the drivers here are some increased capital. We have personnel costs, which are also include some of the additional costs for the retirement system, or increasing costs there, and some decreases in the state of New Hampshire bridge aid funding. Getting into the specifics, if you look at the town hall, the numbers are there. $2,484,639 this year, going to $2,293,727 for the proposed 2018 budget. It's a decrease of $190,122. Increases are due to primarily to salaries. We have more elections coming up, 3 in 2018 versus 1 in 2017, and a reorganization of administrative positions. We have some CIP items, which $25,000 toward the master plan, and some system security updates for $70,000, and the IT data center, $150,000. And we have special articles that we'll get to later. The decrease in all departments is due to the removal of the health and dental insurance from each department and combined together with the property liability coverage. So we'll see that as a separate item for all the insurance costs. And insurance, we had it gone down by $132,000, $754. The increase in this line, if you look at where it shows up in insurance in the 2017 budget, is $287,383, and then the proposal is $2,252,820. The insurance costs themselves, have gone down in 2018 by $132,754. The increase is due to the rolling health and dental insurances out of the individual departments. And if all insurances had been combined in 2017, the budget in 2017 for insurance would have been $2,384,574. So there's been some good work. The folks administering the insurance programs to get some improved pricing. Looking at the police department, the existing budget for this year is $4,741,581. Proposed budget is $4,068,581 for a $673,000 decrease. The increases are due to salaries and benefits and additional resource for the dispatch services. And the decrease is due to moving the insurance and benefits to the insurance line. Within the CIP program, we're going to be putting in 3 new cruisers, replacing 3 of the cruisers for $121,905, and replacing portable radios for $78,750. In the fire department, the current budget, $2,596,863. The proposed budget, $2,280,033 for a decrease of $316,830. Again, the increase due primarily to salaries and benefits and some additional costs for water and hydrants. The decrease is moving the insurance out of this line. Within the CIP items, we have an ambulance for $175,000, replacing one of the Jaws of Life for $40,000, and replacing portable radios for $120,000. And then we'll have special articles there as well. Public Works, the current budget is $4,749,907. Proposed budget, $4,383,652 for a decrease of $366,255. Again, the decrease is due to the moving the insurance and benefits out. Among the CIP items, we have the road plan for $975,000. Vehicles and equipment for DPW is $533,000, replacing some aging equipment. And bridge repairs, $295,000, and a new GPS unit, $45,000. We also include cemetery improvements for $57,000. And there will be special articles for the DPW area as well. Parks and Rec, the existing budget, $441,473. The proposal is $419,454 for a decrease of $22,019. Again, this is due to insurance, essentially. And within the CIP items, we have the Goffstown Sports Complex for $100,000 to get that rolling, and a department head vehicle to be replaced for $33,000. The library, currently $740,511, and the proposed $673,571 for a $66,940 decrease. Again, the increase due to salaries and benefits, and the decrease due to moving the insurance and benefits out. And I think you'll see a lot of these numbers on your handouts there, so that should be helpful in chasing these down. Okay, the capital improvement CIP program, the budget for the current year is $1,837,963, with a proposed budget of $2,333,655. So an increase of $495,692. A lot of the increases are due to the sports complex, which is new this year for $100,000. The data center that we talked about at town hall for $150,000. Town hall alarm system for $70,000, and the fire and police radios for $200,000. Vehicles, we've got about $1 million total in vehicles, and about $1 million in the road plan. And with that, we also have a very low debt ratio for the town. So for tax impact, the proposed articles, including the special articles, is going from $9.16 to $9.51 for a 35-cent increase. If we end up in the default budget, it's going from $9.16 down to $8.79 for a 37-cent decrease. These numbers are all excluding anything to do with the $9 million that has to do from the school, so that will be its own decisions with the school board and with the select board. But these are the dollars and so forth to operate the town. And I think we have a historical tax rate which shows a fairly reasonable ups and downs, and continuing in that trend. At this point, we have the budgetary warrant articles, and we have the collective bargaining agreement for the police patrolman's unit, and the collective bargaining agreement for the dispatchers. And you have numbers up there, $39,000 this year, $39,668 for the patrolman, $25,840 for the dispatch unit. And the budget committee has been supportive of both of these articles. The budget committee has also been supportive of the next article, which is a fire department capital reserve fund. This is for $225,000. This is to be funded out of the unreserved fund balance for the town, so this will not have a tax impact. And the budget committee has been supportive of that, and we use those to purchase, to smooth out the purchase of expensive fire vehicles. Article 6, land purchase, capital reserve fund. This was started in the current year's budget, and it is here for this year as well for $250,000. This is to have money approved so that when land that the select board and the community decide is important to take advantage of an opportunity to purchase, that we've got money available for that. This is also going to be funded from the unreserved fund balance, so this will not have a tax impact either. The Budget Committee has been recommending this as well. The next article is the road reclamation, and this is again $150,000 to continue the repair of our roads. Again, funded through the unreserved fund balance with no tax impact, and the Budget Committee has been supportive of that. Next article is for a production screener that would be used for the Department of Public Works, and also the Parks and Recs folk would be using that to help build out the new sports complex there. This is $100,000, again, out of the unreserved fund balance. And the Budget Committee is supportive of that. The next article was a water line extension down into the DPW offices. And this is to get potable water down there, and this would also be supportive of the sports complex as that's developed. This is for $250,000 and is again funded through the unreserved fund balance with no tax impact. The next article is a Goffstown Main Street program, and that was for $20,000. The Budget Committee is supportive of that, and that it feel that it helps the community and makes Goffstown a good place to be. And the next article is Crispin's House, which is supportive of taking care of our teenagers and beyond, and children, and for $20,000, and the Budget Committee is supportive of that. I probably failed to mention, but the Budget Committee supports town budget as shown in the budget warrant articles. There is additionally a petition article for additional firefighters, and I'm sorry, I didn't have it in my sheet here, but the cost of this would be for 8 full-time firefighters from July to December this year, $338,973. The Budget Committee does not recommend this article. So that is the town side of the budget as we see it from the Budget Committee. At this point, I'll open it up for public comment on any of the town budget. And if you would like to speak, please come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and then we'll be glad to have your comment. What article would you looking for? I'm sorry. Okay, any comments from anybody on any? Yes, sir, please come up.
Thank you. My name is Charles Tentis. I reside, own a home, single-family home at 28 Knollcrest Road. Taxpayer and homeowner for 31 years here in the community. Also the chairman of the Economic Development Council. I was the individual that brought forth the Article 12, the addition of 8 more firefighters, full-time firefighters to be added to the docket for the fire department. Talking with the chief and asking some questions and gathering some information from him. did provide to me the 2016 population for the top 25 communities in the state. Goffstown ranking at number 14 with 17,765 individuals. Of those 25 communities, there are 2 that have full-time firefighters staffing the firehouses between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. on a 7-day basis. Currently, they're on call. There's Goffstown at number 14 and Milford at number 17. The reason being is bringing this forth, we think it's time the community does add these full-time firefighters, get full-time 7-day, 24-hour coverage with firefighters in the firehouse, ready to respond, engine companies and ladder companies to whatever the situation may be, whether it be a home or business fire or an automobile accident with entrapment. It all comes down to timing, getting these individuals there. With the on-call firefighters, they have to rise, get up from their homes, get ready, get to the firehouse, man the apparatus, and then get to the scene. Minutes count, as we all know. And it would take too long. Biggest reason I see is the size of this community. Correct me if I'm wrong, I do not even think the student population at St. Anselm's College is in this number. And I will guess that number is probably around 2,000 students that live in those dorms 9 months of the year between September and May. And the chief can correct me if I am wrong, that we are first responders to the college, being in Goffstown. Even though they have an 03102 zip code, we are still the first responders. If you add those individuals into this population, you're now approaching almost 19,000 people. That's the size of a city. We're bigger than Laconia, and we're bigger than Exeter. And those are cities, and so is Lebanon. So I really believe that this needs to be on the docket and let the taxpayers decision. And we truly believe that we need to have a full-time, 24/7 firefighters in the firehouses, ready for the call, whatever it may be, as we move forward. I think as individuals move here, we have the residences at Hadley Falls coming, other projects that are coming, whether they be commercial, retail, or even residential, that you're going to have more activity here in the town, and we need that coverage. Companies and individuals look for infrastructure, that it's properly manned and the manpower is there to take care of the situations. It's not just buying fire trucks and building firehouses, it's manpower. And I think the manpower is sorely needed between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the overnight hours. We all watch the news lately. Throughout New England, there are a lot of major blazes taking place. There's a major 4-alarm fire as we speak in downtown Boston. Major fire in Lynn yesterday. So I think it's time that we move forward, get this on the ballot, let the taxpayers make that decision, and hopefully it'll be a positive one. And I think it'll be a good economic positive one too, when individuals and companies see that the infrastructure is correctly there with the right manpower for the fire department. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Barbara?
Barbara Griffin, thank you. In regards to the change for the insurance accounting that went on, that you had to deal with in looking at numbers, is that going to in the future be picked up in the town hall budget? And in regards to the, I got nods, so for
I
people
believe
who
it
know
is,
that,
yes, that's my understanding.
it's a yes, I think, right? So in the future, when you all are, when the budget committee is examining the budget, that insurance number is going to be one line under town hall for you to take a look at? Is that the intent?
That's my understanding.
Because I would
I'll
just,
defer to Peter.
I think it makes it easier to look at, Barbara, instead of trying to look at individual departments and insurance costs.
Here, do you want to?
It was easier to
Dr.
do it
Mike?
all in.
I understand, but I also think that insurance and your rates are also a function of the function of our employees. And when you merge the insurance together, you it might distort it. It's been a discussion that I know has been going on at Town Hall for a long time, and I understand that you're doing it. I apologize for coming late, which I suppose is better, Peter, than having to apologize for having missed this meeting last year. But I have a question on the data center and the money that appears to be in a special warrant article in addition to the town.
No, it's a CIP item.
Well, it's in addition to the town budget. So
It's part of the town budget.
if I look at this sheet, it's presented separately as CIP, correct, or not?
Yes,
Okay.
but that doesn't, it's not a warrant article, it's part of,
I understand that. So my question is, as to the town hall budget as presented, which does not include CIP, our information technology line
doesn't.
is going from 439 to 512 to 586 over the last 2 years. That is sort of a phenomenal increase. So could I get the details of what that encompasses, because I'm learning that there's also money in CIP for apparently a different information project. So who's in charge of what's going on with information, and why has it grown so much?
You want that, or you want me to?
If you want to give it a shot, I don't have the detailed information.
I think one of the intents, as I recall it, and I'm sure Adam or someone can do a better job than I can, but the intent was to get to, we're going to have 2 locations where everything is backed up so that if one goes down, everything can still be running within the town. That's this year's articles, or this year's CIP issue. I think there's been a lot of work on interconnecting everything over the past 2 years. So I think that's a piece of it. And I think there are some hardware computers that are coming up for replacement that are part of this as well, the PCs, after a number of years. But I'll defer to Adam or Peter if they want to speak better to it.
I hope I got some of the information for you, Barbara. Okay, there's 2 different projects going on. One's the data center. The data center is going to have us with 2 mainframes, one at the town hall, one at the police station. That's the CIP project. And then we also have the ongoing dark fiber project that we've had for the last 2 years. So we've also increased our personnel time for the data center. So it's all wrapped in together. I hope that it's not as detailed as you want, but we're more than happy to give you all the detail on it. But that's the crust of it, is we're going with the dark fiber, continuing with our dark fiber upgrade, and then the data centers, which is a mainframe project for 2 mainframes, one at the town hall and one at the police station.
Okay, I mean, I recall the dark fiber discussion at school board meetings more than a few years ago now. I will just say, as a citizen, I've had long-standing concerns about this department and the budget. I think it's a little out of control. I think it's pretty high compared to other communities, and I hope that you've all really had a chance to look at it. I know that you do. And in that light, I would like to tell you, this is my opportunity. I hate the new website. I think it's awful. And when I do a search, I can't ever come up with an answer, even for a calendar. So there you go, while we're talking about that. My other comment would be, I just heard Charlie talk about petitioned article number 12, and he used the word "we" a lot in regards to support of petition article number 12. I also understand that the Budget Committee is not recommending this, and I would urge the Budget Committee to stick by that recommendation in regards to that petition warrant article. I am very familiar with the issues behind this petitioned warrant article. They are not new. They have been in front of this town on numerous occasions, and I would say that I think the new fire station that was built in Church Street was the obvious precursor to this request. I think that the argument that we need more firefighters because there's more building is inaccurate. In fact, building, while it's picking up, we certainly have seen a bigger peak of building previously in regards to life safety and the need to respond to fires in regards to residential. New houses are under code provisions that make them by far safer in the case of any emergency. The references to fires that have been occurring over the winter we see repeatedly are for older structures that don't have a lot of the life safety codes that have been required. The numbers have been run on this on numerous occasions before in town in regards to the fact that the fire department many years ago became a life safety operation that is an EMS service. Fire departments throughout the state provide the majority of their service for EMS services, which is why this town decided years ago to go to 24/7 EMS coverage, but not fire coverage. I don't believe this town can support it. I don't think the data in regards to response has ever supported it. And I would urge the Budget Committee to continue to support that they will not continue to not recommend petition Article 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, an alumni.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth DeBrule. I live at 9 First Ave. I just have a couple of easy questions for you guys. Milfoil, is that in the regular operating budget?
It is.
Do you remember if it's at the same level, 15,000?
I believe it is.
And the transportation program, I see last year it was funded by a warrant article, and this year it looks like we haven't spent any of it or very little of it, and it's not being brought forward. This is for this transportation service for mostly for seniors and other people who need help getting around. Can you let us know what happened to that?
So I'll let you.
Why haven't we spent any money?
So the transportation program is still in effect. It was a 2-year warrant article, so the funding. The transportation, there we go. Transportation article is still in effect. It's a 2-year article, so it's a 2-year program with a grant funding through Manchester Transit. So that is still in effect. We've paid any bills that have come in, but I think they're probably just lagging as far as what's been submitted from Manchester MTA.
And then my last question is, I might have just spaced out when you were talking about this, Mike, but the land purchase article, is that for a specific parcel of land?
It is not. This is to have a reserve fund. If you recall, in the current year, we raised $250,000. I guess that came out of unreserved fund balance. I don't recall, but we had $250,000, and a piece of that was spent on a house near the intersection where Sully's is, to make room for in the future being able to deal with traffic there. And this is for an additional $250,000. And I think one of the questions we've asked as a budget committee is, okay, folks, how much are we looking for here when we get? And the number I've understand was maybe $1 million, but no more. And then any use of this fund would be through select board bringing it forward, and also I think 2 public hearings as well before any of that got spent. So,
Okay. All right.
but this is the second year of that capital reserve fund funding. Thank you. Oh, I thought you were going to speak for us.
I'm just making it more comfortable for people to.
Thank you. Thank you, Al. Okay, any other comments on the town side of the budget? What's that? Okay, let's move into the school department. Oh, I'm sorry, Jane, you were...
Ginny McKinnon, 25 Meadowlark Lane in Goffstown. I'm sorry. I'm just a question I have. Main Street program and Crispin's House, I believe, are, in my opinion, are valuable programs. And why we see them continuously on the budget, on the ballot every year as warrant articles, why have they not been incorporated in the regular budget?
I will let somebody speak to that would like to. I think the idea behind it was some of that is to show this community support for these programs, which would be helpful in their fundraising, but either that or it's just been historically, that's how we've done it, and Nobody has made a change to come forward with it the other way, but that I'm aware of. Go ahead, you can speak to that, Peter.
They're private organizations. You would have to go through every year to fund that. You couldn't put a private organization in your budget every year. It would have to be a special article.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, Christy Garrison, Tibbetts Hill Road. I just had a question on the total for the articles out of the unreserved fund balance. What is the total of the articles?
I have to do the math here. I don't have that at the tip of my...
What was it? It's about $1 million. About $1 million. Okay. I was looking at my...
975,000.
And then my other observation is, can we put this information on the town website? I think at one point a couple years ago, they used to have the budgets on the town website, and it no longer is. I'm just asking, once it's approved, if we can put it on the town website so people not here could look at it.
I thought it was on there, but if it's not, I'll make sure it gets
It's
put on.
not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any others? All right, let's move to the school department budget then, school district budget. Is there a handout? I don't have a handout for you, I'm sorry. The proposed budget for the school board, as you can see, I'm sorry, we'll move up one, thanks. Thanks, Derek. The proposed budget is $41,984,091, which is an increase of $814,807, or about just under a 2% increase. Again, this is not addressing what happens with the $9 million. This is looking at what are the costs required to run the school system for the coming year. And at this point, we're going to focus more on the general fund portion of the budget, which is going from $39,636,621 up to $40,442,620 for $805,999 increase. The other two parts of the school budget are the food service budget, which is self-sustaining, and there's a special revenue fund for some grants that are there. But the rest of these things come together for the school, operating the schools and the SAU. The default budget is $40,414,200, which is just $28,420 less than the proposed budget. And again, if the proposed budget is not approved by the voters, then the default budget is what we'll operate with. This slide's probably a little bit busy, but the total that just shows you the other two pieces of the overall budget, the $41,984,091, which is the proposed, and this is what will be on the ballot. And you can see the general part of that. The food service is $1,127,671, and the special revenue is flat at $413,800. In terms of what accounts for these budget increases, it's personnel costs, salaries, taxes, benefits for both regular ed and special ed, the New Hampshire retirement system, and health insurance costs. Just a little bit of background, the school population has been essentially flat, which is better than a lot of the towns and communities around us, which have been decreasing numbers. You can see they've been flat for about the last 4 or 5 years. In looking at district-wide changes at all the schools, there are some minor changes due to technology and supplies. There's some adjustments for utilities and a more focused approach on facility maintenance, so there's some new things happening there. Here's the school-by-school numbers for Glen Lake. The current budget is $1,651,913, and the proposed is $1,683,845 for a $31,932 increase. Maple Avenue is proposed to go from $4,456,368 up to $4,838,660 for a $382,292 increase. Part of this is due to the addition of 1 paraprofessional and 1.5 full-time special education teachers. At Bartlett, the current budget is $2,525,992, going with a proposal of $2,555,753 for $29,761 increase. The part of this is requirement for an additional teacher, maintaining the school class sizes of 18 to 22 folks. In addition, a reading specialist is going from half-time to full-time, and an administrative assistant half-time to full-time. At Mountain View, the current budget is $9,384,593, going with a proposed budget of $9,448,983 for a $64,000, $390 increase. There we're dealing with new science textbooks and some increased video equipment. And at the high school, $13,891,856 with a proposal for $13,939,663, an increase of $47,807. We've been putting in new social studies texts and a new student assistance program. Looking at the district general fund, currently $7,725,899 with a proposed budget of $7,975,716, a $249,817 increase. This is including items shared across the schools, including substitute teachers, some special educators, expenses for the SAU and the school administration, and costs are shared with New Boston. Revenue projections. Current budget is showing, there. Current budget, $16,564,034. Proposed budget, $15,727,705 for a decrease of $836,329. Looking at the tax rate, currently 1463. And projected tax rate of 1502 for a 38-cent increase. And from the default budget, it would be a $15 increase. I'm sorry, $15 tax rate and a 36-cent increase. And again, this does not speak to anything with the $9 million. And you can see a trend of the historical school tax rate. Now, additionally, there have been 2 warrant articles submitted. And one of these is the creation of a capital reserve fund for projects that are approved in the CIP program, the capital improvement program. And the intent here is to raise and appropriate $200,000 as of July 1st. The article does not use the unreserved fund balance. The article will identify the school board as agents to spend on the approved CIP projects. And some examples are roofs, heating systems, window replacements, locker replacements, parking lot repairs, and IT. And this has been discussed among the school board for the last 3 years. A second article, I will, let me get through both of these, Peter. A second article here is for land purchase, and this is to raise and appropriate $695,000 to purchase 110 acres of land behind Goffstown High School. And the money, again, raised from taxation, not used from the school district's unreserved fund balance. School has been negotiating with the seller for years and held a public meeting to walk the land on. And it's adjacent to Goffstown High School for future use or for whatever things are needed there. These two items were just submitted today. The Budget Committee has not had an opportunity to discuss them yet. We will be discussing them in the meeting following this hearing session. But at this point, we don't have a position on those. We do support the budget as submitted without the warrant articles. And I think there are a couple pictures at the end of this of the land that's being discussed here. And that's what we have available. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions or comments or edits from anyone.
Elizabeth DeBrule again. Can we get more of an explanation about the $800 decrease in revenue? What is the 800? Sorry, what did I say? $800? 800,000. Sorry, forgot some zeros there.
Can I defer to Diane or Brian to speak to that?
Okay. Good evening, folks. I'm Brian Balke. I'm the superintendent of schools. In terms of the revenue projections, something that I will share is we historically have been pretty conservative with our revenue projections, but we do continue to have less money coming in from the state. So for the state of New Hampshire, we get about $3,500 per pupil, and there have been, not to get into the nuances of this, but there was a stabilization cap that's been removed. And we also are looking at some lost revenue from Dunbarton students as they've no longer been within the school district. But this, again, the revenue projections are just that. They're estimates to the best of our ability. Some of these do include fixed costs, like money we receive for building aid from the high school bond project from 2001. But the rest of those are numbers that we've received from the state, and we have realized reductions over the last several years, as well as downshifting of costs. So for example, we've had increases in our retirement costs over the last several years because the rate that we have to pay has been increased coming from the state.
Okay. Diane, did you want to add anything? Okay. Okay. Other comments?
Barbara Griffin. My comment is on the Capital Reserve Fund, and it's not that I'm against it. My concern actually is with the number, because I'm familiar with the size of the projects that come through for the school, and you have little projects and you have big projects. And I think that once you go down this road from a process of requesting funds from the taxpayer, you do somewhat tie your hands in your ability to then request special warrant articles for other things. And I know the town has sort of started doing capital reserve funds for specific things, not in general. So, you know, we have the reserve funds for various fire department things and this and that. And so my concern is that when you set this up, that it's not going to be sufficient to meet the needs of the district as things arise, and that in requesting special warrant articles to address needs as they arise, you're going to be faced with the issue of we're putting money into the capital reserve. Why should we be allocating other money? Because there's no special designation to it. And I'm sure the school board is thinking that through. As I said, I'm not opposed to it. I just worry sometimes that without having a specific purpose designated for the capital reserve fund, your ability to raise funds for needed items in the future are going to be severely hampered by the existence of this fund. From a budget committee standpoint, I understand it's somewhat of a different consideration than it is from an administration on a school board level, but that's the concern I saw when I saw the number on the screen. So I wanted to share with you my support and my concern for the warrant article.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments?
Sorry, I will just make one comment, Elizabeth DeBrule again. If people are noticing, the rate of increase for the school budget this year is slightly less than the rate of inflation between last year and this year. So I understand there's a lot of pressure about this budget, a lot of concern about this budget. I would encourage people to vote for it. I'm glad that you guys are supporting it, and I hope that you maintain that support. In this year, in the extraordinary circumstances we found ourselves in, I think we have to go ahead based on the information we have now and support this budget. Next year's budget committee, however, is going to have a very big task, and I hope that they have the information from the audits, and unfortunately I think what they're going to have to do is unpack those lines more than we've ever done before and really take a hard look at that budget and see where we are. But this year, I think this is the best we can do, and I think we should go with it. And if there is a surplus, we are assured that it will be returned to the taxpayers at the end of that fiscal year. Now that we're getting some good processes in place, I think this is definitely a good budget to support.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, Christy Garrison, Tibbetts Hill Road. I want to thank the budget committee members, and the school board members. I know it's a tireless job. I've been on it. I know it's not always everyone's so pleasant, but thank you for your hard work. I do want to say to the school board, I think having no handouts and such little information on the screen is a disservice to the taxpayers. I would like to follow it a little more. I would like more information. I would love to have it on the website, but I do expect when I walk into the public meeting to have, at minimal, a handout that I can look at the numbers. But again, thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Hey, go ahead, Diane.
Christy, just so you know, we'll have those handouts and more specific information at school deliberative session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again, Barbara Griffin. I have been asked to ask, and I am somewhat curious, as to the warrant article for the $695 for the land. From a town perspective, I have not seen a set dollar amount proposed for a particular parcel. So the question I received was, is that a negotiated purchase price for the land, or is that an amount that we're being asked to raise to deal with it? And just to make sure who actually purchases the land when this goes through in regards to when this happens, or if it happens. So there was a question as to the amount and how it was presented, and transactionally who was involved in it.
I'll have to defer. We just received it tonight, so.
And I just just want to make clear that I've recused myself from the land discussion, so we'll defer to Superintendent Bulky.
That's a great question. That is a negotiated price. That's something that we've worked with over the last several years. Folks may recall that we did a public meeting, including a walkthrough with GTV, where information was given about the land. We've looked at this land for a number of years and a number of different options. I don't have a laser pointer. Maybe Derek does. Of course he does. So right here, folks, this is Goffstown High School. These are the fields behind the high school. We're looking at two different parcels. So this is Wallace Road. This is Norman Road. It's this parcel right here and this parcel right here, including this section down here below the PSNH or the traffic overhead lines easement. So it's these two parcels. In total, it's 110 acres. So at this point, this land is something that the school district has been very interested in. We're looking at this not for a specific building project. This is really truly being looked at as land for the future. 110 acres right in the center of town, adjacent to Goffstown High School, we see as an incredible opportunity for an investment in this community. Further, sorry, that's making me hunch over. There is an easement. This right up here is the villa. This is Devrant's farm, and this little house right here is what's called the Emmaus House. This parcel also has a right-of-way from Mast Road that goes right through that house and the villa land. This is about 22 acres, I think it was, or maybe 32, and the easement goes right across. So at this point, Crestwood is down here. There are multiple points of access into this property, right here from Wallace Road in this corner, over here from Norman Road, as well as the easement that goes right across the villa land. So independent of whatever might happen with the villa down the road, that easement for water and sewer and entrance to the property come with the property.
Thank you.
I'm sorry? Who's the buyer? The school district. Yes. And again, this is money that the school district made the decision to not recommend this using unreserved fund balance. That $9 million that Mike has referred to is being returned for tax relief, and the school board's pleasure in this was to put it to the voters to raise and appropriate that money completely separate from the surplus money that will be returned. And there is a signed purchase and sales from the seller.
Well, thank you. Any?
Again, it just raised another question and point I want to make, and it's not so much for the budget committee, but for town and school officials. To my memory, this would be the largest acreage purchased by the town, and I consider the school district part of the town, that I can remember. I think we have some conservation easements that are multiple acres that are up on the top, and the conservation land from many, many years ago on the mountain. But this is, in the past 30 years, this is probably the most acreage. And I'm also hearing that the town is doing building projects for recreation. And if this goes through, I would urge town officials and school officials to get together, because maybe it's time to have a master plan vision for development of property in this town where the school district and the town is actually getting together, because it seems to me this is a huge site. I have walked it from a planning board perspective in previous developments that have been proposed on this property. There's a reason this property has been for sale for such a long time, in my opinion. And so if this goes through, I'm just putting out there, I think this creates a lot of opportunity for everyone. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jill Calvo, and I am a resident of Goffstown and live at 15 Shirley Park Road. I'm a little perplexed at Article 4, where the school board or school district wants to purchase 110 acres. My first question is, that's a lot of land for a flatlined area that doesn't have pupil growth. In the PowerPoint, and I don't have a handout from the school board, I'm having a hard time with the transparency this evening of what that land is actually for. There was one bullet point in there that they projected that they used it for maybe athletic fields. So for our children, I haven't seen really any concrete strategic plans to improve the academics. I don't know how 110 acres improves academics. And before we expand anything, shouldn't this town see some economic growth? And does the school, and I don't think so, I'm probably answering my own question, I'm being a little catty, is the school going to pay taxes on 110 acres? Because an industry could be moved in there, or other houses that could share this tax base. And now we have 110 acres of land in Goffstown that we're not going to get any revenue from. I think I just saw on the town side of the budget that we just spent over $1 million building a sports complex with land we bought last year. So now we're going to have another sports complex on the high school with new fields. Now, sports are great, and they build team spirit, and they keep the kids out of trouble. But an athlete's cost for going to the school is 4 times what they're getting for the cost of math. Because there's a lot of hidden costs that people don't see. And then you have to pay for the coaches and athletic directors and the fields and the upkeep and the watering systems and the turf and refurbishing those helmets. I'm wondering, in the payoff for our children for the future, how that's going to help them. When they should be focused more on engineering and sciences and math and English. You know, I walk in here into this school and there's a trophy case. And those trophies are great, but where's the debate kids trophy? That's the skills they're going to need in life. Where's all the names for all the valedictorians that came through this school? I think there's so much focus on these athletes, and when they go to college, if the parents are expecting them to get scholarships, they're very minimal. And I think less than 40% of seniors are partaking in sports. So the other 60% of the students aren't benefiting from sports. Not only are they not benefiting, but these athletes are leaving school for the day to go play somewhere, and the kids that are in the school get a substitute teacher because that coach just left, and he's not teaching in the class. I'm just perplexed, very much so, that we don't have a balance anymore in this town. And I had said, I'm all for sports. I had children that went through this school system and they did baseball and they did basketball and lacrosse and football and swim team, and I can name them off. But when they went to UNH, even though they had AP classes, they had to stay an extra semester, and my son's staying an extra year because this school did not prepare them in the sciences that they needed and didn't give them the foundation. And that's, UNH didn't care in their classes that they were a star of the soccer and the lacrosse team. So at this time, I would really hesitate to be buying 110 acres of land and taking that away from the town where it could be used for income, or other uses that we could use that money for. Get these kids out of these trailers in these elementary schools. Get them in a real classroom. I think we've got to really reassess our priorities for education. I think it's getting a little out of balance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Holt, 27 Stinson Road, and I apologize for my cold. I can understand everything that you said. The one thing that I will say is that for those of you who have lived in Goffstown for a really long time, I'm sure you can see changes that have happened in 30, 40 years. One of the things I will say is they don't make any more land. This is an opportunity to envision what not only the school, but the future for Goffstown can look like, not only for us, but for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Schools used to be built for 100 years. That doesn't happen anymore. We can't envision what will be for these kids, but what we can do is to make this land purchase for them, for whatever the school will look like, and it won't be just a building, but it will be a lot of things. This land will be available for them if we buy it. It may not be what we think, but it will be there for this town. And if we let this opportunity slip by because we don't understand what it will be, we're going to lose that opportunity. And I really encourage us to make this available for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Jared Talbot, 17 Pinecrest Drive. Can people hear me okay? Thank you. Can you go back to warrant Article 3 for a moment, please? One question I had about this warrant article is, why are we consolidating all the individual items that we may have to purchase within the fiscal year next year versus have individual warrant articles for each item? I know it was kind of mentioned a little bit by another member, but with the trust factor that's occurred and that's been uncovered, why do we look at this and have a slush fund for some of these items where if something does break, we have a contingency fund to handle those items? So what was the strategy, what was the logic on having one warrant article for all things that we want to spend on for the next fiscal year?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a consolidation, and it's not just for 1 year. What this is for is it's to allow for some saving for some bigger items. CIP is a planning tool, so you can anticipate large expenses and budget for them. CIP is, it's overseen by the planning board. So it's not something, these are all items that would be approved by CIP. That's what this is a funding vehicle for. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I can follow up on that. So where's the documented strategy on what potentially that fund would be used for?
Have you seen the CIP matrix?
I have not. Where's
Okay.
it documented?
Is CIP matrix on the website? Okay. Okay. The CIP matrix is a public document, so it is publicly available. Town Hall, you can call the SAU. Superintendent Balke would be happy to give it to you.
George?
I'm George Fullerton. I was the Budget Committee's representative of the CIP. The CIP committee is a committee that goes through requests by the various departments and assesses necessity of the purchasing of large items, which go into a matrix. We try to even the expenditures out over a number of years. What results of that from the CIP is a report to the planning board, which goes to them for approval. There are multiple reasons to have CIP. CIP is really necessary to identify capital projects in order to assess impact fees and such. Without that, you don't really have the power to assess impact fees. Just some more information on that.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
McCarthy. I don't know if I'm wrong in saying this, but did we not have to put a warrant article through, like last year, to do? Did we not have to put a warrant article through last year or the year before to fix the roof at Mountain View Middle School for $200,000? And would this cover the stuff like that? I don't think we should have to fix our schools based on whether it gets passed by a warrant article. I think we should have the money set aside to fix this stuff. And if that's what this produces, then I think this is a great idea.
It was discussed to put a warrant article through to fix the Mountain View roof, but it actually did not go through on warrant. But that's what this warrant article is intended to do, is help save money, put it aside so that when big ticket items such as roofs, boilers, et cetera, come through, we've got the funds set aside to pay for it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Thorn on everybody's side. That piece of land, you're not going to get a better opportunity to get a piece of land that's attached to the school that you'll be able to do future stuff with. Yep, it's an upfront cost, and we don't have any idea what we're going to do with it. I think it was sort of put forth like we could just put fields on it, and I think that was sort of the first thought. But I mean, to be able to put, perhaps, if we had to build a new high school or try to combine the schools into one facility, rather than have a new school built on another part of the town. Right now, all the schools couldn't be further away from one another, which is always, I think, results in an issue sometimes. But being able to do a new school system on that piece of land possibly in the future would be great.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, we will adjourn the budget hearing at this point. I'm going to suggest we take 5 minutes, and then we'll start our budget committee meeting. gonna be, we gotta have something.
Okay, yeah, we need to have
So
it
you
work.
can, we'll go test it. Okay, can you, you need to tap it, yeah.
I'll see it.
Tapping it, you go check.
That ain't broke it, you can make it work.
Is it on?
This is working.
Can you hear me though? It's not coming out.
Yeah, it's great. That's super. Okay, do we have everybody? That's all fine. You're all right. Are we okay now to video? Okay. All right. Let's call this one to order now. We'll have to pass the microphone around, I'm afraid, but that's all right. We will do it. At this point, we've put our budgets out. We have gone through recommendations or not recommendations of everything with the exception of the two school board articles that just came forward. I guess my first question is, are there any reconsiderations that anybody wants to do on any of the ones that we've already acted on?
Are we obligated to make new recommendations on anything?
No. The question is, we've put it out to the community, we've heard comments. If those comments lead you to feel we should, sorry. Yeah. You move pretty fast though, buddy.
I didn't know what it was, a bomb, who knows? There you go.
Sorry. No, we don't have to make any changes, but after we've put this out there, we've heard comments. If there are any things that make anyone want to revisit any of the recommendations or non-recommendations that we have, we can do that. If not, we'll move to the two articles that were just landed tonight.
Mike?
Yeah.
This is on, right?
Yeah.
Remind me, anything that we may want to bring back up tonight is not the final night for us to do that, right? We could come back to it before deliberative.
No, this is going forward to deliberative with the recommendations that we have. Now, if we need to
Okay, I just wanted to
spend
make
more
sure that's
time
clear.
recommending or not recommending, we can do that. And if we can't get it all tonight, we'll do it another night too. But go ahead, Peter.
I think, Peter, what you may be referring to is that the deliberative says that somebody makes a change in an article, a money article, that the budget committee would have another shot at it.
If there's an amendment offered, right?
Right.
The budget committee meets after each deliberative in order to consider. Yep. Remember that the budget committee meets after each deliberative session in the event that they need to change their recommendations, or if there are changes they need to vote to recommend or not.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, am I seeing anybody that wants to revisit anything at this point?
I think we kind of have to at least make sure that we all kind of reviewed some of the public comments that have come through. I'm not sure if I'm ready to say that I want to actually revisit in terms of our recommendations at this point, but I would maybe want to take some time to note that. If anything, it's okay. We jump maybe right into these articles and maybe go back to it. That's fine with anyone?
We'll go forward with the two articles if no one else has any issues, and then if you, at the end of that, perhaps you'll figure how you'd like to go with that. Okay. I'm going to say that right now our recommendations stand until the end of the meeting anyway. So let's talk about the articles that we have. Should we treat them individually? It'd probably be best. So we'll start with Article 3 was the Capital Reserve Fund. Who's got comments on that?
Did you want to talk first, Susan?
Oh, yeah,
Or
I'll
you can talk.
Oh, hi.
I'd like to talk about the article as it's written, as it's the first time we've seen it as the Budget Committee. When I watched the school board meeting and the $200,000 figure was thrown out there, it seemed to be a little aloof, and I would just like to know more background as to why that value is at the $200,000. We heard, is that going to be enough to fund this? I don't have the matrix off the top of my head. I see Peter looking at it now. So I think that's something that this board needs to discuss. Thank you. Yep.
So Cole, part of this capital reserve fund is it would be something that we would be asking voter permission to put in every year. So this year, if we had voter approval, it would be set up at 200,000. Next year, if we had funds, we would put that back on the warrant. We don't have to, but it's something that's designed that you kind of build into. And again, this is a savings vehicle.
And just to be clear, this is to raise the appropriation.
Yes, and that was very intentional, so as to keep any of this separate from the 9.1 million that people have been talking about. And just to speak to your sense that it was aloof, Cole, I'm sorry that you saw it that way. It's an effort on our behalf to be conservative, but also have a number that is at least something to get us started so it can be an effective savings vehicle. Barbara was not wrong that you look at some of these CIP projects and they're big dollar amounts, but there are others that are smaller. 200,000 a few years ago would be enough to do a roof. So does that make sense to you?
Yes.
So
Okay.
Nyan, you're gonna cap it at 200,000, right? You're not planning on building up to it to like $1 million. That's it.
No, we plan on
Yeah, I'd like a clarification. What's the maximum you're trying to get up to?
we don't have a listed maximum.
Well, I guess I'm asking what is the thinking of the board and the superintendent? And this has been my question for Peter and the select board with the land, as a matter of fact, is, what are we aiming for here? Because it's going to keep coming back.
Would you like to suggest a maximum?
I'm just asking,
No.
where do you see it? I don't know what the thought, you folks have got the thought behind it, so.
Of course, it's difficult because boards change year after year. I know that our spirit isn't to ferret away millions of dollars, but our spirit is to try to set up an effective funding vehicle to handle some of these projects.
I'm concerned about it, at least on the discussion point of being open-ended. And would really like at some point for the board to decide, hey, this is what we think is what we need to get to. This is what our biggest roof is going to cost. This is what our biggest boiler is going to cost, whatever. I mean, I recognize we just did $1 million project for taking care of the drainage and everything, so if that's where we're heading, then so be it. I think just looking for some transparency here of where we
Do
go.
you have a comfort zone?
I hadn't really thought too much about it because I didn't know what was coming, but I would say under $1 million would be at least where I would start to get uncomfortable, but
Personally, for me, that seems comfortable, but again, boards do change.
I get it, and
Let me know when it's my turn.
you're up.
Okay, thank you. This came before, well, wait a second, now we're talking this budget committee meeting, let me finish, I got the floor right now. This came up last year. Some of you that were here last year may remember. And the problem with this is exactly what Barbara was saying. A capital reserve fund should target something in particular. We have a capital reserve fund on the town side that targets fire apparatus. We have a capital reserve fund that targets land acquisition, okay? Those are two examples of our capital reserve funds. Now, when we talk about the CIP, George and I both sat on the CIP. You were the school board, you were the at-large. Budget committee, I'm sorry. And I was a selectman's rep. And I can tell you that in the CIP this year, the school came in and says, oh, scratch that $75,000 gymnasium door. We did that already, which was scheduled for 2019. Scratch that $35,000 pickup that was for this year, because we already did that out of last year's budget. So scratch the 25,000 room air conditioner, because we went ahead and did that already. So you can see they've been spending that money and out of their existing budget. These items that they're talking about are maintenance items. They should be included in their regular budget, just like everybody else. The town doesn't carry a capital reserve fund for building maintenance. We have a town hall, we have 3 fire stations, we have a police department, we have Parks and Rec, and we have the DPW. So we also have and we don't do that. We put it in our budget when necessary, or we have the ability to take it out of our capital reserve. Now, let's talk about the reserve funds. The school has the opportunity to put $2.5 million, or 2.5% into a fund for emergencies. I would think that if we had a roof problem, I don't think the state would allow you to take that money out as a roof problem. I think they would call that a maintenance problem. And they would want you to pay for that out of a budget, and that's something you would budget for. Just like we did with Town Hall, we had to take it out of, we unfortunately ran into a problem where, if you all know, we had to tear this floor out of the bottom, and we had to deal through different lines in our budget to take care of it. I think a capital reserve fund needs to target a specific item. If you want a capital reserve fund, it should target a specific item, not just general. And we're talking about, from what they're talking about and what I've read and what we heard tonight, they're talking about general maintenance items. So I would urge us not to do that.
I disagree. These are items that are approved by CIP through the CIP matrix. These aren't necessarily regular maintenance items. These are over $25,000. That's your threshold. These are not regularly occurring items. They are predicted, but they're not regularly occurring. And thus far, with the exception of any unreserved fund balance, or there's no vehicle to handle some of those bigger items. And that's what we're looking to do, is establish this capital reserve fund so that we have a vehicle to methodically save some money year after year, so that when the time comes to have to replace the boiler, et cetera, we got it.
I disagree with what you're saying, Diane, and the reason why I say that is we budget for police cruisers $120,000. We budget equipment at the DPW. A dump truck now is $150,000, and we budget that. I think we're talking about the same type of items. We're talking of large expense items. You got a budget for them, you put them in the budget. You don't have to put a capital reserve fund in. Capital reserve fund should be targeted for one thing. We've talked about at length over the years about capital reserve fund for equipment, for DPW, for fire, which we did for fire. Fire truck costs $1 million now. It's prudent to put that money in there to pay for a fire truck. You know, and I don't think we should be starting a capital reserve fund for maintenance items, and these are for maintenance items.
The school is looking at this budget as a rainy day fund. It's not targeted to one specific thing. I just want to have that money as we have the maintenance. The same idea. You know you're going to have a leak someplace on the roof. So you're just essentially putting a rainy day fund.
I guess one of the things I look at for some of these capital reserve funds is as a kind of a smoothing mechanism for taxes if we're going to end up with $1 million or $500,000 items. I guess I'm not clear on how much we're looking at for potential uses for this. I guess that's my first concern. My second, I have a couple other concerns. Conceptually, I'm not opposed to it, but I think this may not be the year to be asking for it, just from everything else that's been going on. And I think the other part where I struggle is over the last 4 or 5 years, we've ended up with a surplus in the school budget of $1 to $2 million. It doesn't seem like we're in a tough spot here, because I can see us coming out with another $1 million or $2 million at the end of this budget year. So I'm.
We don't know that for sure.
Because we got
It's-
work to do.
yeah, right. We need to do some homework.
Again, clarification. So we're talking about putting 200,000 raised and appropriated with this warrant article, but can someone explain to me in terms of this this capital reserve, that funding source to put into that pot, can it only come from the voters raised and appropriated, or could it come out of a surplus next year of unreserved funds or anything like that? Is there anywhere else where this money could come from other than voters voting to raise and appropriate? Not to support the warrant. Let's say it passes and the fund is, no matter what, for this, once it's created.
To retain money. To retain money, it needs to be approved by the voters. Retain or spend.
I think to clarify that, it would say where it's coming from, and it would not say to raise and appropriate. If it came next year and the goal was to, the school board's option was to use unreserved fund balance, it would still have to be on. And regardless, anything that's not used from that unreserved fund balance from the prior year goes back as tax relief. So if that was not approved, that money would still go back to the taxpayers. I think looking at the CIP numbers, George and Peter, you've obviously looked at this more than me, but the numbers, it goes about $750,000, and then about $1 million for the next 3 years. And then there's a drop-off. I assume that drop-off is because in 2022 and 2023, those are the total school projects. I assume that's just because it hasn't been planned out that far.
Well, make sure when you're looking at that, Cole, you're not including the bond payments in that. Bond payments are included in the CIP.
That would be included.
Which are.
So that would be a
600
drop-off.
Yeah, in 22.
22, that
But
would be a
when you're
drop-off.
looking
Okay.
at your CIP payments, okay, when you're looking at your CIP matrix, the bond payments are in the budget. So those, you would take that out of your, when you're looking at the raise funds for CIP, that would come out of the budget. That's a budget item.
Discussions have gone on in the past. You know, we do create capital reserve funds for huge items like fire trucks and whatnot, where what we generally do is identify those. And part of that is that, you know, the thought process on this is that we're looking at items that if we didn't have a capital reserve fund, we would probably have to issue bonds in order to fund them. Or, you know, so if you have some identified things that are big, like, you know, over $200,000 each, or like fire trucks that are $1 million each, those should be identified up front. And, you know, the problem I have is we have roofs and then a fairly vague list of what is actually going to be in there. So just to create a capital reserve fund without that kind of targeting and identify why it's needed for you know, as a funding mechanism, you know, I have a problem with that.
I guess just looking at the CIP, I don't see, so let me, like, a school, that would not go on the CIP matrix if we needed a new school.
No, that'd be a bond.
It would be a bond.
But
So
the bond
this,
payments would show up on the CIP matrix.
and then that would
Once it's
offset.
approved- Once it's approved, the bond payment would show up. If
So
you
the
look-
money put in
if
through,
I have the CIP matrix, and let's take
Yep.
a look at 2018. It has Goffstown High School renovation and addition bond, okay, which is going to expire in, you said 22, Brian? 21, 22. Okay, that bond payment, okay, is $699,350. That number is in your budget. It's a CIP item, but it's in your budget.
can you just talk into the mic, please?
Okay, I'm sorry. So that $699,350 is in your budget. So when you look at the $1,153,000 in school projects, that is also included in there. So you have to deduct that. And like I said, they removed a couple of items out of that budget, 75, let me see, in 2018, they took out 35,000, 25,000. So there's, you know, out of that 2018 proposed CIP budget, they had the extra funds in the current budget, so they did it then, which was last year. Okay. Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments, or would someone like to make a motion one way or another here?
I'll make a motion, we do not recommend the capital reserve fund.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yes. What I guess my problem with this being presented to us tonight is it seems like if this was as big of a discussion among the school board, I feel like it should have came to us further on in budget talks. And I just kind of have a problem with us being the gun being to our head tonight, basically to make a recommendation on this. I understand that the school board obviously is confident in the purpose of this and the intent, or else they would not have put it before us tonight. With that said, I still have a big issue with the transparency of this being put to us tonight, and I'm finding it very hard to make a proper decision on this given the short time frame. I think it probably it seems at least that it came about because of the surplus and wanting to give the voters an option. But I also understand that was something you were talking about before, so it's not 100% connected to that, but I think it would be wrong to say it's not at least somewhat connected to that. And I think if it was on our table before that was identified earlier on in budget talks, this whole sequence of events took place pretty recently, I think then I would have been more apt to support it. But at this time, I'm finding it very hard to justify voting to recommend this.
I just want to make one response to Cole, and I understand where you're coming from, Cole. But this discussion did take place last year. It should have come to us earlier. I do agree with you. Diane shaking her head, yeah, we had this discussion. And if this was something that they wanted to do, they should have brought it to us earlier. I agree.
Kelly?
So I just want, it was Peter's fault, not mine. So I just wanted to know if there is a specific, I just want to clarify this for everybody. Is there a specific intent with this money, or is this just an emergency, just in case sort of fund? I just want to clarify one more time before we.
The specific intent is to provide a funding vehicle for CIP-approved items that are on the CIP matrix.
So would we be able to get a breakdown of what those specific items are?
Yes.
We would.
Well, at the time of the expenditure, yes, you
Okay,
would be
so
aware
not,
of the expenditure.
not at this moment.
No.
So if it is just sort of, are there avenues, other avenues? I understand the importance of this and
Mhm.
what you're getting at, but I agree with Cole is that, I mean, how could we possibly recommend this without knowing the context of what it's for? So I'm having a hard time with it. It's more just an emergency, you know, like when things happen. Do you know what I mean? I'm having a hard time separating. I understand the intent, however, it's not backed up by anything tangible, which is, I mean, does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, and the only thing it's backed up by is the CIP matrix, and that these are planned expenditures. They're not necessarily emergency expenditures. These are items that you know are coming up that we're going to need to replace. X, Y, Z item. We've replaced boilers. I mean, I hate to keep going back to roofs, but there's always the most obvious items that you know have a lifespan that you know are predictably going to need to be repaired, which is why you set them up on the CIP matrix. You know that they're coming, and you know what year they're coming. CIP reviews it. They determine whether or not they approve the item being on the matrix for that year. Do we need to put it out a year? How else do we balance based on other expenditures in the town? So this is a funding vehicle to be saving money for those items. Peter is right, we could put them in the budget. We put the $200,000 roof for Mountain View Middle School in the budget. We did that. So it absolutely can be that way, but this is a way for us to not have a $200,000 spike in the budget for something that we knew that was coming if we could just save money a little bit at a time. I do want to, on behalf of the school board, just let you know that we are acutely aware of the time frame and the fact that we're bringing this to you tonight. Our intent is not, as Cole said, to hold a gun to your head, and I apologize that you feel that way. I do find that regrettable. I know you all know that we have had our hands full with some very extraordinary circumstances over the last 2 months, and we've been trying to make sure we give all of our situations the consideration they deserve. We did, Peter said it, we brought this last year. We had talked about it in the springtime again, like, okay, we need to be ready for budget season. Budget season comes, excitement takes place, and this just wasn't at the top of where we wanted to be. So again, we do completely understand the time frame and the sentiment for what that's worth.
I guess I just fall back to, we had plenty of meetings with the school board before the surplus was found, and this was not a part of any of those. Budget committee, as far as I know, it's a 4-member turnover every year, so if you have these conversations last year, that's still a decent amount of, or 3-member turnaround, that's still a quarter of the elected members not being present at those conversations if you had them last year. I don't know. I'm kind of lost. I get that the school board has had these discussions and had this thought for a while, and you put a lot of effort into the thought to bringing us here tonight. I just don't understand it not being in the initial budget discussions that we had. I guess that's what I continue to fall back on and be the stumbling block for me in making this vote tonight, or recommendation rather.
I think, sounds like we've heard from just about everyone. Is anybody that hasn't spoken their piece want to?
Okay, so this was discussed in the past. Has this specific language gone out to a warrant in the past, or anything close or similar that we can all remember?
No.
On the school side, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're at a point of let's make a decision. So we have a motion on the floor to not recommend. It's been seconded. I'll ask everyone, those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. So, okay, I guess we're 10 to 1 to not recommend. Okay, let's move on to the next article for the land acquisition.
Using myself, so my vice chair, Stephen Dutton, has stayed, so I'll have to sit here.
Okay.
Just to start on Article 4 in the discussion about this, once again, I would make the same point that I made about the previous comment, in that this was not something that was presented to us with the rest of the budget points. It's been put on our lap tonight, saw it discussed at the last school board meeting. So once again, I'm dealing with those same thoughts that I had on the last article. I'm also dealing with not being familiar with this land and pretty much anything about it besides that it's big and it's next to the high school. That's pretty much all that I understand about it at this point. And I'm being asked to make a recommendation on this tonight. So once again, I have troubles with this. So if the school board member would like to speak.
I'm going to ask Steve to give us a little bit of a description of the property. This isn't the first time the Budget Committee has seen this. We've talked about this before. And if I remember in the past that, yes, it's 110 acres of property, but it's really not really great property. And that there's a lot of wetlands out there. And my question to Steve is going to be, I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't get a chance to introduce to Steve Dutton. He's the assistant chair or the vice chair of the school board. Have we had a wetlands delineation out there yet?
Yes, we have. It's true that there is substantial wetlands on the property, but it's 110 acres. It's contiguous to the high school. There is a significant amount of usable land, and we have done quite a bit of consideration and have talked about that quite a bit. And in terms of flexibility moving forward and how we could use this in terms of a vision for the district, we think that there are a number of different ways that we can put this property to good use to build on what we have down in that area.
Steve, can you give us even an estimate of how much significant means out of 110 acres?
Brian, can you help me with that in terms of the usable?
I'd say probably 2/3 are usable. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to just grab that mic there if you want, Brian. That makes
So this property does have wetlands on it for sure, and there is a stream system that runs sort of parallel to Norman Road that goes across the villa property. So we're not saying that we think that this is the absolute best parcel of land that the school district would ever want to acquire, but we do think it's the absolute best location that we could ever possibly envision. And I do think in terms of having a vision for the future, the school district has no immediate plans to develop this land, to come in with fields, to have any kind of a recommendation for a bond. This truly is the school district having the vision and foresight to be able to say, we can't imagine what our potential building or facility needs might be in 10 years or in 30 years or in 100 years, but this would allow for a vision for the future. Bartlett was built in 1920. It had additions put on in the 1950s. That building is not going to last forever. Maple Ave goes back to the 1950s. We are not going to be able to maintain these facilities, a couple of decades into the future. So this really would be the opportunity to think about what future planning could look like and to look at a campus that's connected, which, by the way, from a budgetary perspective, has savings. You're potentially looking at sharing staff, sharing fields, sharing resources. And in terms of Cole, I don't disagree, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that the timing has not been good, but the negotiations have been ongoing with the seller, and they concluded just prior to the decision and actually finalization today. So this has not been something that the school district has been sitting on. This is something that has been right up to present day, present time, to be able to bring this forward with an agreement between the seller and the school district.
Yeah, if I could just add on that, Cole, you know, we've been negotiating for literally like years on this piece of property and evaluating it and talking about it. It's been a challenging negotiation. We only control half of that in terms of the timing. So if we could have brought this forward sooner, we would have.
So one thing I just want to say, Cole, I had the initial reaction to this one as well, is kind of like we don't really know anything about this, but I think Brian has kind of stated that the intention of it is simply the acquisition for future processes. So I just want, I'm saying this out loud to myself, or in my brain to myself, so I just want to say it out loud, that we also have a responsibility not only to look at this responsibly, but give the voters the same opportunity. So I think in this regard that we kind of do know everything that has been presented to us in the broadest sense that could possibly be. So I just wanted to know, I'm going through the same thing as what I'm getting.
And I'd like to offer just a question. School board buying versus the town buying, has that discussion been had, and are there pros and cons to that from either the school board or the town?
I don't think that, the Board of Selectmen haven't been approached. This is something the school, I think, is pursuing, and always has. Like Steve said, how long has it been since they've been looking at this property?
I mean, we walked it a year and a half ago, Brian?
Yeah, even longer, I think. We had a public meeting where we had GTV that joined us, and we had a walk of the property that was all recorded by GTV. It's somewhere on demand. We've been looking at this parcel, these two parcels. There are two parcels, one zoned agricultural, which is something else of significance that people should be aware of. So the idea that there could be a larger potential tax base for the town that would take action of the planning board, that hasn't happened. But our negotiations, it feels like we've been doing this for 3 years, and we have never been to a position where we had a number and a set of requirements that were agreed to.
Yeah, there's some significance to it being in agricultural, and you know, I'd ask the superintendent here you know, if he could find out for us whether this is whether it's in current use, because one of the comments was that, you know, there was concern about losing the tax base from it. With agricultural land, and if it's in current use, the taxes that are being paid to the town are virtually nothing. I have land in current use, and you know, it's like 38 and a half acres, and the taxes on it are like $64 a year because it's in current use. So, you know, that concern about losing tax base, I don't think it's there.
So, do we know of any other offers that have occurred, or anyone else that has looked into this property in the last 10 years? Any other interest, outside interest in this property? Have developers approached this property in the past?
The town hasn't had anybody, but I don't know if the school knows of anybody.
You know, I'm not sure I can speak specifically, other than I know that there have been efforts to develop this land before that have been unsuccessful. Brian, were we aware of any other
We are,
interests?
but honestly, I don't feel like I can comment on any of what the past inquiries have been. I will say that Stephen is right. There were a number of efforts that were brought forth to the planning board in terms of potential use, potential development. There was a proposal that I believe ended up being a lawsuit between the owner and the town. I'm not going to speak to that, but I think that's information that's out there, that there were disagreements between what the usage could be. There were proposals to have a mixed-use type property that had apartment buildings, that had townhouses, as well as commercial development. There have been a lot of other efforts, but I'm not going to speak to them. But the planning board certainly has a lot of information about these two parcels and could speak at length about them.
Obviously, I think I would be very interested in that information, so that I can kind of get a sense of what the value could potentially. We're not talking about what it's getting for tax revenue in current use today. We're talking about the potential tax revenue that we could be missing out on. The issue that I potentially have, although in reality I do want the school to have that opportunity. I think it kind of makes sense. But having the school be a landowner of property that we don't know how it may or may not be used, it's not territory I'm totally comfortable with in terms of really understanding. Again, I think I'm looking at people around this table, and maybe even around this room, who maybe know more about what people have tried to do with this property, how much development has been attempted, what the alternative value actually could be, maybe not today, but in 20 years. The same thing we're talking about in terms of the future value for our school is the same question I have as it pertains to the future value for our town in other respects.
So, Mike, if I can just add, if this is helpful, the school district did have an appraisal done on this property. 3 years ago, the appraisal value was $625,000, and the methodology for the determination of that was looking exclusively at a residential type situation based on what the cost would be for development and what the potential return on investment would be. The seller also had an appraisal done that was over $1 million. So there are two appraisals that have been done on this property.
So you're talking about like 10, 20 years from now, what's going to be used? I mean, there's always a potential if they hold it for 20 years, they can always sell it if there's nothing going on with it, right?
We think that's not a question of whether the town owns it or the school owns it. It's kind of a pertinent question, though?
No.
I just didn't know if there were any
Probably.
pros or cons.
That's
all.
the same thing that I'm wondering.
We've heard a lot of talk that there could be possibly a sports complex. The fields could be developed for sports. Would that be accurate?
We don't have any current intention right now to develop fields on there, but that's certainly one possibility, and I think that's a use for that property that's already been proposed in the past.
So this brings up the question is, and I understand going with D1, we want to have two fields, and that we've talked about in the budget committee. We've talked about it, and if we start to do another set of fields, aren't we duplicating our efforts with the Barnard property and with the school property? Should we take our efforts and say, okay, abandon the Barnard property and move it all over to this property? I mean, that's something that we have to think about in the future also. I mean, there's no sense in having two sports complexes at the cost of the taxpayer to have two different. Carl.
I want to second what Peter just said. What my thoughts are. It feels like we're going to have to jump to somewhat the sports complex, right? And the proposed acreage.
I would kind of think that we're better at planning than to actually go through with duplicating fields. Brian expressed earlier when we talked about the $100,000 for Parks and Rec to develop the 2 soccer fields at that property that we have down there that we've already put money into, that the school and Parks and Rec would have ongoing discussion about the future of that property and what the purpose of that would be in the end. So I think we all share the concerns. I would think I have trust in the school board and I have trust in Parks and Rec that we would not be building 2 sports complexes if we did not need that to happen. So I think when they say fields, they're saying, yes, fields is an option for this. There's also an option if we decide something different with planning in the future for the future of our elementary schools and our middle school. There would need to be a place where that could happen, and this would be a good property if we had to do that in the future. I mean, Bartlett, when we went there with the principal, she said they put a basketball hoop on the school, and it fell off because the bricks were so soft. Not going to last forever. This is something that we haven't really thought about, and this is just one use for this property that is in pretty prime value. I mean, if we don't buy this, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to be a Walmart. We don't know if it's going to be a bunch. We don't know if it's going to be a bunch of apartments there. We have no idea what's going to happen to this if we don't do this. This is eliminating. I think it's eliminating a big question mark. I was kind of scared hearing the school board and not seeing a number amount. The number amount we're giving is roughly $700,000, roughly 50 cents on a tax rate. I think it's all something to think about. I guess somebody else has further comments.
Were you talking, Kelly?
No, that's what I was going to say too, is that we've already communicated in length at our meetings that the town and the school board have agreed to speak together in regards to the sports complex. So I agree that that would be, I wouldn't even consider that an issue. And I know.
Are we at a point? Are we at a point for a motion here in some direction?
Budget committee needs to save money. Please don't.
Yeah, can I have a motion from anybody?
Yeah, I would, if,
Brian was in the middle of saying something.
I was just going to offer, and I apologize, but just because I heard it mentioned several times, when we were before the budget committee about a month and a half ago, and the conversation came up around the Clinton Barnard land by DPW, I had indicated that I would facilitate a meeting. In fact, that happened. We did that just before Christmas, and I met with, there were two of the rec commissioners that were there. Jane Stekowitz was there. Howard Sobolov was there. Megan, the DPW director, Rick Wilhelmi, Frank McBride, Wendy Hastings, my middle school principal. We had a whole group that met. I will say I had never seen the plans before, so that was our first opportunity to look at the plans, to understand what their multi-year vision was. There are multiple, if we can do things effectively and efficiently, we're certainly committed to doing that. Having athletics off campus is very challenging and difficult for the school district. It creates issues around transportation. It creates issues around additional costs for transportation. There's infrastructure that we wouldn't necessarily have on site. And I would say it is certainly not the vision that this is a sports complex. We'd be lucky to have one sports complex. We're not Goffstown's not going to have multiple sports complexes. There is, when you talk about the two elementary schools that have extensive needs, there could be a time where it would be better to build a new middle school, move elementary students to Mountain View Middle School, have a larger elementary school with two different wings, which is how that building's designed, and to look at shared collaboration with the town. Maple Avenue would make a remarkable library for this town. The size of the library that we have right now is so small. They're looking to build, they're looking to put on additions there. Think about what we could do. Think about creating a place for the rec department, a senior center. There are so many options that the school district and the town could potentially collaborate on if we were to ever consider a different elementary school model. And the what ifs are what we're talking about here, folks. We have no intention that we're going to put lights and turf out there. That's not what this is. This is land for the future right in the middle of town that has 3 different points of entrance from 3 different roads. Actually 4 if you include Crestwood. You've got Norman Road, Wallace Road, Crestwood, and Mass Road. Thank you. So you're talking about a prime piece of real estate right in the middle of town.
Chair's looking for a motion. I'll make a motion to recommend.
I'll second.
Second. And having made the motion, I have the privilege of speaking first. Okay, I was just going to give some history. I don't know whether people are all that interested, but over 30 years ago, I was on the school board, and what came up at the last minute was that the property next to Bartlett School was offered to the school at approximately $1 million back then. And after that, I was on a space needs committee, and we looked at Bartlett School, for example, Bartlett School back then. Rebuilding Bartlett School and making classrooms that meet state standards and whatnot, you really can't do it there. And this plan makes sense to acquire a piece of property and a campus setup. And, you know, granted that the $1 million that was requested back then I thought was just but it went forward to the school district meeting and was of course shot down because it just wasn't realistic. And here we have something that's over 100 acres at this price, which is far better. Get the campus there, and you know, one of the considerations for the future, of course, is that if we build a school to replace Bartlett School and maybe Maple Avenue School, that those pieces of land, the Bartlett one can certainly be disposed of for commercial property, and you know, just thoughts about that kind of thing. I think this makes all the sense in the world to go forward with it.
Any other discussion? Are you ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of the... Okay. All in favor of the motion to recommend? Peter, you're not ready, huh?
Sorry. When we're discussing this, and we're saying, I'm all in favor, by the way. And there was nothing that was brought up. I asked my questions. Nothing was brought up that made me want to change my mind. I just wanted to see if anyone at this table or anyone in this room could say, no, we need this tax base. It's going to something. Someone knows something about this property that I don't know. Didn't hear that. It makes all the sense in the world. I still have to question if we're saying, yeah, this works, then what you just talked about in terms of the commercial application of other properties that we own in town, is that something we need to revisit? And our budget is still open.
Well, I think that's beyond the question we got on the floor, Peter. I think we want to...
Mike, let me
I think
just
that's
say,
a...
if we're going
Well,
to
wait a
support-
minute. Let me finish. I mean, I think what we're talking about now is, do we buy the land or not? We're not getting into, do we sell Bartlett? Or do we launch a new school program? School building, I don't think we've got the homework done for that or the timing for that. So I think what we're talking about is, how do we feel about the land for some future uses? That may be a good use, may not.
Mike,
don't know.
I understand what you're saying. I know that when I'm thinking about what I want to do with my money, okay, and I'm thinking about the things I'm moving forward. I understand there's people looking at me at this table being like, what in the world is this guy talking about right now? But when I think about how I'm going to spend my money on major projects moving forward and my vision for what I want for my family, I think about what else I need to sacrifice. I think about, okay, if I want to move in this direction, our budgets for our school, our taxpayers, you know, as much as I feel bad for everyone right now, the reality, political suicide, but they haven't been all that great to the school system over the last 10 years either, okay? They voted down, but Pete, let's go. 110,000 was the difference last year. They gave it to them, fine. Back in 2009, we voted it down, okay? No, we voted for the proposed budget because the proposed budget was $1 million lower than the default. Next year, same thing. The next year, they tried to come in with a budget that was $1 million higher than the default, and they lost, okay? The schools learned their lesson. They can't do anything in this town where they actually want to do something for a school system that's ranked, what, 5th? Right? So I know
you're,
that I get
you're kind of
pretty
putting it at me that I have a problem with that. I think if you go through
no,
the
you're-
record, and when I was on the budget committee, if you go through the record, you'll find out when it came to contracts, I was always the first one to vote yes on the contracts and put contracts first.
Oh.
I have no problem with supporting the school. Our schools are important. Now, when they talk about,
I'm not
let
speaking
me
against
finish. When they talk about moving schools and closing schools and things like that, that's a different model. This town has always followed community schooling, okay? That's why we have, still have Bartlett, because we wanted to keep a school there, okay? It was now this is the first time that we've heard that maybe we're going to change our policy and get away from the policy of community schooling, okay? We're talking, we didn't want to bring, and this is new boards. Now, remember, every board changes. They didn't want to bring all the kids to travel them to Tibbetts Hill Road, or they didn't want to move the small. So they had they wanted to keep the small schools. So this is a change. I am embracing it. I've always said we should have had a bigger school and should have brought, and consolidate. You get no argument from me. There's no reason we have to have portable classrooms and be paying these extra monies and paying for extra people. We don't need to do that if we could consolidate. I'm all for it, but that was not the school board wanted to do 5 years ago. They didn't want to. They wanted community schooling. That's what they wanted. I'm all for this.
I got to say, I feel like we're getting off the track here. We have one mission in front of us at the moment, and the mission is, what do we feel about proposal for the Warren article to go, and the motion's on the floor, it's been seconded. Is there something pertinent to that we have to say? Because we're not going to get into what's the school board going to think about next week, or where are we going to put our next school, or why didn't we build it over here, or why don't we sell that? We're not doing that. We are going to talk about this proposal.
So, again,
I'm
before I
sorry
go
to
into-
be, I'm just.
No, you're doing the right thing. Right? But if I can answer your question. So, before I got into the support of voters, which I think is important to discuss whether something's actually going to get support in the future. However, what I was discussing was, if we're saying that we want to go in one direction, then I would like to be thinking about that. I'm happy that there have been some more discussions, but I want to see more evidence that those more holistic discussions of what we're trying to do, rec fields or anything, is actually happening before we're saying, yeah, we want to move in this direction, we want to buy this land or whatever.
No, I understand what you're saying, and that's a great point once we acquire the land, if that happens. But I think at this point, the real question is, should we acquire the land? And I think it's more of the future. This may be beneficial for the future, and I think that's where I'm at. But
What we're saying is, it opens up options.
right, but yeah, right. So can I call the question at this point? I think we have a motion on the floor to recommend this article. All in favor, please raise your hand. And you're in or not? I think as you're the sub here, so you get to vote. Emily, what was your vote? You're in? No? You're a no? Okay.
Emily, she wasn't present for public comment on this, because she had a prior obligation. Is there any procedure between actually taking place in the vote?
No, she's certainly entitled to be one of the voters. So I guess we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 12 of us now, 11? 11 to 1 in favor. So now I'll take a motion to adjourn. We did the school budget before, and nobody had any things that they wanted to change, so we're going with that. Okay?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? I'm sorry, was anybody have, Any comments? I'm sorry, I should not have shut it off. I'm sorry. Thanks for sitting through all this. I'm sorry I didn't